Sylvia Likens and her sister Jenny found themselves with Gertrude Baniszewski due to their parents' circumstances. Their parents, both carnival workers, struggled to make ends meet, and with their mother in jail for shoplifting and their father on the road with the carnival, they needed a place for their daughters to stay. Gertrude Baniszewski was a single mother with 7 children, living in a run-down home, and relied on odd jobs like ironing her neighbor's laundry to make ends meet. Gertrude had also experienced multiple divorces, physical abuse, and battled depression, which she managed with prescription drugs. Despite her own challenges, Gertrude agreed to take in Sylvia and Jenny, as the Likens family felt they had no other options. This decision would ultimately lead to a tragic and horrific series of events, as Gertrude and her children subjected Sylvia to physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, ultimately leading to her death. Lester Likens entrusted Baniszewski with the responsibility of disciplining his daughters while under her care, for a weekly payment of $20. In the first 2 weeks of the Baniszewskis, Sylvia and her sister were treated relatively well, despite some tension between Sylvia and Paula Baniszewski, Gertrude's oldest daughter. However, when their father's payment arrived late, Gertrude's attitude towards the sisters changed drastically. "I took care of you 2 bitches for 2 weeks for nothing," Gertrude yelled at Sylvia and Jenny. She then dragged Sylvia into a room, closed the door, and Jenny could only listen to her sister's screams. The next day, the money arrived, but the torment had only just begun. Gertrude started to abuse both Sylvia and Jenny in public view. Despite her frail appearance, she used a heavy paddle and a thick leather belt that belonged to her husband, who was a former police officer. When Gertrude was too tired or weak to continue the abuse, Paula took over. However, Sylvia became the primary target of the mistreatment. Gertrude forced Sylvia's own sister Jenny to participate in the abuse, threatening to make her the new target if she refused. Gertrude accused Sylvia of theft and subjected her to severe physical abuse. She took Sylvia to a church event and force-fed her hot dogs until she vomited, then made her eat her own vomit. Gertrude's children participated in and were even encouraged to partake in the abuse of Sylvia and her sister. They physically assaulted her, used her skin as an ashtray, and threw her down the stairs. Afterward, she was often forced into scalding hot baths. Gertrude preached about the evils of sexual immorality while her daughter Paula, who was pregnant, accused Sylvia of being pregnant. Gertrude's 12-year-old son, John Jr., enjoyed making Sylvia lick his baby siblings' soiled diapers. Sylvia was forced to insert a Coca-Cola bottle into her private area while the Baniszewski children watched. She was so severely beaten that she lost control of her bladder. Gertrude deemed her unfit to live with her other children and locked her in the basement without food or access to a bathroom. Neighborhood complicity in the torture of Sylvia Likens. Gertrude Baniszewski's malicious fabrications lured neighborhood children into participating in the horrific abuse of Sylvia Likens. She falsely accused Sylvia of insulting her daughter, inciting her daughter's friends to assault her. During the trial, witnesses revealed Gertrude's recruitment tactics. Baniszewski testified that Gertrude claimed Sylvia had slandered her mother's character. Anna, without verifying the allegations, joined in the beatings, throwing Sylvia to the ground and striking her. Gertrude's own children were indoctrinated to believe Sylvia was a prostitute. She enlisted Ricky Hobbs and her daughter Marie to carve the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," into Sylvia's abdomen with a heated needle. Despite attempts by Sylvia's sister to intervene, Gertrude denied her access to the girls. A neighbor reported the abuse to a public health nurse, but Gertrude's deception and the nurse's failure to locate Sylvia in the basement led to the conclusion that no wrongdoing had occurred. Despite witnessing Paula Baniszewski physically abusing Sylvia on multiple occasions, neighbors remained silent out of fear for their own safety. Jenny, who faced threats and violence from the Baniszewskis and their associates, was prevented from seeking help from authorities. As a result, Sylvia's abuse persisted unchecked, with the complicity of those who could have intervened. "I'm going to die," Sylvia whispered to her sister 3 days before her untimely end. Her sister could sense the dread in her voice, and so could Gertrude. Gertrude, knowing the inevitable, forced Sylvia to write a letter to her parents, claiming she had run away. She also made Sylvia write that she had met a group of boys who she had given sexual favors to, and in return, they had beaten and mutilated her. Shortly after, Sylvia overheard Gertrude telling her children that she was planning to take Sylvia to a forest and leave her there to die. In a final act of desperation, Sylvia tried to escape. She managed to get out the front door, but Gertrude caught her. With the help of a neighbor boy named Coy Hubbard, Gertrude beat Sylvia with a curtain rod until she lost consciousness. When she regained consciousness, Gertrude stomped on her head, sealing her tragic fate. Sylvia's demise and the ensuing investigation. By October 26, 1965, Sylvia had succumbed to a brain hemorrhage, shock, and malnutrition. After enduring 3 months of relentless torture and starvation, her speech had become incoherent and her limbs were barely responsive. Upon the arrival of the police, Gertrude Baniszewski maintained her fabricated story. She claimed that Sylvia had been in the woods with boys who had brutally assaulted her, carving the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," into her body. However, Jenny seized the opportunity to break free, whispering to a police officer, "Help me get out of here and I'll tell you everything." Arrests and charges. The police apprehended Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie, and John Baniszewski, along with Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard, for murder. Neighborhood participants Mike Monroe, Randy Lepper, Darlene McGuire, Judy Duke, and Anna Sisko were also arrested for injury to person. These minors later blamed Gertrude for coercing them into participating in Sylvia Likens' abuse. Gertrude pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, with her defense attorney arguing that she was mentally unstable. Convictions and sentencing. On May 19, 1966, Gertrude Baniszewski was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Despite her lawyer's admission that she deserved the death penalty, she was spared. Paula Baniszewski, who had given birth during the trial, was convicted of second-degree murder and also received a life sentence. Richard Hobbs, Coy Hubbard, and John Baniszewski Jr. were convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 2 to 21-year prison terms due to their status as minors. All three were paroled in 1968, just 2 years after their incarceration. The elusive justice for Gertrude Baniszewski and her children. Gertrude spent 2 decades in prison, with no doubt about her guilt. The autopsy confirmed Sylvia Likens' prolonged and agonizing death over several months, as per Jenny's testimony to the police. In 1971, Gertrude and Paula were retried, resulting in Gertrude's conviction once again. Paula pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter and received a sentence of 2 to 21 years in prison. She even managed to escape at one point, but was eventually recaptured. After spending about 8 years in prison, Paula was released and moved to Iowa, where she changed her name and became a teacher's aide. In 2012, Paula's past caught up with her when an anonymous caller informed the school district about her previous conviction for the death of 16-year-old Sylvia Likens. She was suspended from her position. Gertrude Baniszewski was granted parole for good behavior on December 4, 1985. Jenny and a group of protesters gathered outside the prison to oppose her release, but their efforts were in vain as Gertrude Baniszewski was set free. 5 years after Gertrude's release, Jenny finally found solace when the murderer succumbed to lung cancer. Some positive news, Jenny wrote to her mother, enclosing a copy of Gertrude's obituary. "The wretched Gertrude is dead." She laughed and was overjoyed. Despite the trauma she endured, Jenny never held her parents responsible. "My mother was an exceptional parent," Jenny remarked. "She simply placed her trust in the wrong person." I'd like to take this time to pay my respects to the victims and all the families that were affected by these heinous acts on both sides. You deserve better and are forever in our prayers. May you rest in peace. Conclusion. Child abuse is a serious crime that involves the physical, emotional, or sexual mistreatment of a child. It's a violation of a child's rights and can have long-lasting negative effects on their physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. It's a global issue that requires awareness, prevention, and intervention to protect children from harm. If you suspect child abuse, it's crucial to report it to the appropriate authorities. Remember, it's always better to be safe than someone's next victim. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Killer Cliff Notes, and I'll see you in the next one.